And we can now take you international. Ghanaian students in Ukraine are asking government to consider land evacuation as the immediate measure of ensuring their safety. Since yesterday, citizens caught up in the tension between Russia and Ukraine have been making a passionate appeal to the Foreign Affairs Ministry to act fast. Already, the situation is escalating as all diplomatic measures have failed to yield the desirable results. Although Ukraine has shut its airspace for now, Ghanaian students are calling on government to liaise with neighboring countries in order to consider land evacuation. Philip Bobiansa is president of the Ghanaian students in Ukraine.
When President Zelensky, president of Ukraine, announced the state of emergency, we immediately also issued a statement out to our people about what it means in this condition, in this state. One of the few things we told them was to start getting foodstuffs and water and any other personal things, they might need in this instance. So I think some of them started doing that yesterday, even going to ATMs to try to withdraw as much as possible that they can, keep for the upkeep. So some of them did that, but for today, as we didn't expect the things to escalate to this extent today. We were all caught by a surprise. So today, some of the students went out to get food and all of that, but due to the huge queues and all of that by Ukrainians and other foreigners, some of them couldn't get it. So we've encouraged that we stay in groups now. So most of us are in groups. If you know a friend, if you have friends, let us try to stay together. Whatever we have, we share them. If you need.
So that's the demand from students living in Ukraine. They're actually Ghanaian, and they are calling on the Foreign Affairs Ministry to try and act fast. Adib Sani is a security analyst, so he understands all of the issues happening now, the tension between Russia and Ukraine. We'll go into the international dynamics shortly, but first of all, let's deal with the demands from our own, the Ghanaian students resident in Ukraine. They want a land evacuation. We know, at least for now, that you can't fly in or out of Ukraine. That's not possible. But they are calling for evacuation to be done through Poland, and they are asking for Belarus and some. Help us understand the dynamics really. Is land evacuation possible as of this moment? Because we need to do something and act fast.
Absolutely. It is possible. It is practical. It is feasible. Just that it's dangerous. Even if air evacuation was possible, I wouldn't advise that to even happen in the first place, because anything that flies is seen as a threat, whether it is on the Ukrainian side, whether it is on the Russian side. Let's not forget that MH17 was shot in eastern Ukraine by separatists supported by Russia, resulting in the death of about 293 passengers. And when the US killed Suleiman, Iran also intended firing back in the end. They downed a civilian airplane. So at this point, flights is a no-no. However, the road part of it, if you are going to evacuate on land, that could also be dangerous, because considering the fluidity of the situation, we need to really tread cautiously before you move. I don't know what the Ghanaian government has done, whether they've indicated to the Russians or the Ukrainians our intention to move students. If not, they could be potential targets, I must say.
I'm sure that you've been monitoring the parliamentary debates, the arguments from both sides of the House. We've seen the minority side starts the call for evacuation. The majority is obviously telling us that that would come at a cost. Should cost be of concern at this moment?
Absolutely. And I mean, it beats my imagination how anyone can even bring this up, because it's the responsibility of every government to ensure the safety of its citizens, whether they are home or abroad. Okay, I thought there was even a window of opportunity for us to explore at the beginning of the crisis, when Western intelligence all had information that there was an imminent attack. So at that time, we could have successfully, without issues, evacuated. Unfortunately, here we are today. We seem to be reactive.
Are you suggesting intelligence failure?
Absolutely. And we have a research department that is supposed to gather the necessary research and let us, make decisions in a much more informed manner. Unfortunately, there seemed to also be an intelligence failure on our part. Even if it were so, Western intelligence, British intelligence, American intelligence all pointed to one thing, that Vladimir Putin intended attacking. So before the attack, some countries evacuated their citizens, but we didn't. So at this time, cost should be the least thing we should talk about, because in the first place, we have even failed the students. So whatever resources government has to bring to bear to ensure that these Ghanaians stranded there are safe, we have to do it without recourse to whatever cost.
So I guess the concern now is about the best strategy possible in getting our interest out of Ukraine. That's the challenge now. Yes. What's the strategy for you?
Okay, good. I think that considering how volatile the situation has become, it's a war situation for crying out loud. Things can de-escalate, things can escalate further. Right. Okay, so I would suggest that they hunker down, take advice, respect the necessary protocols until such a time that it will be safe.
You mean respecting the protocols from the Ukrainian government?
From the Ghanaian government, because I understand some directive has been given. Right. With respect to carrying backpack, if you want to go anywhere, you should have your Ghanaian passport and and all that. So that is the information we should be giving them. But if you make an attempt to move them, unless it is a concerted international effort to get people out of that area. But if we want to do it our own way, trust me, we're
helpless, you mean?
We're helpless, I must say, unfortunately.
That's how unfortunate it is, but there are many who believe that the Ghanaian government is complicating matters the more. We are, of course, taking our seats now, our turn now, as non-permanent members of the UN Security Council. We've made a statement condemning Russia, who's been, deemed as the aggressor in this case. Given that situation, it appears that we cannot even evacuate our students, if we want to do that through the land evacuation, into any part of Russia. That's not possible, because we seem to be siding with the West in this case. So what else will be the option now? That's how dangerous our statement is.
I do understand that, but you see, Ghana has maintained some level of non-alliance. Since time immemorial, and the core is very much consistent, in line with many other countries who have called for Russia to withdraw, because it is a flagrant violation of international law. If we had gone there to say any other thing, trust me, people would have looked at us against us.
So we didn't have an option. We didn't really have an
option. Besides, we're a country that believes in the rule of law. We are an example to many other countries, even within the sub-region. So if we go and say anything otherwise, we might lose that respect we have. And if you follow the news closely, I've said it, that Ghana should, I think this is an opportunity for us to demonstrate leadership. Okay, usually when it comes to these geopolitics, we are seen as the spies, the small boys.
We really don't have the small boys.
We have some level, minimal though, okay, but I think that with our membership at this time in the UN Security Council as a non-permanent member, we could take it upon ourselves and get the various factions to return to the negotiation table. I do know, some might find this laughable, but I think that we have such a strong, influential position within that international space, and we can leverage on that to push that agenda.
Help us understand the dynamics as we speak. In fact, there are reports that Russia has invaded Ukraine. That's been the operative word, the media reportage out there. But technically, there are those who are contending with that description. So for those who are not really in tune with the facts on the grounds and what it is that is involved in this tension, what's happening between these two countries, really?
Okay, so prior to 2014, there was a government in place that was very much in tune with Russia. And in 2014, there was a revolution that ended in the president getting ousted. Then a new government in place, which is so Western inclined, okay, decided to divert their attention from, Russia to the West. But today, the trigger effect to all of this is the fact that Russia doesn't want Ukraine to join NATO. You see, there's an Article 5 of the NATO Charter that says if you touch one, you touch all. So what in essence it also means is if Ukraine joins NATO, America can move all of its arsenal into Ukraine. So what Russia is seeking to do is to prevent that from happening, is to create a buffer between the East and the West, because nobody would want to live with an enemy being a neighbor. You get me? Because what in essence it would do is to give Americans the opportunity to in the future stage attacks against Russia. So Russia doesn't want that to happen. Aside that, there's a large Russian-speaking population in Ukraine. And since 2004, there's been fighting between separatists who are supported by the Russians in Donetsk and Luhansk. Okay, so what Putin is saying is, I'm sending troops to Donbass to help the Russians. Proximity, you know. But now it has become something different. So there are two things to what is happening. One, Putin might, you know, take over the country, install a puppet regime, and create that buffer. Or like it happened with Georgia. I just want to pull their ears. I want to pull their ears.
I was just about talking about the Georgian experience, and for those who've been following issues of international security, it takes you way back to the 60s, the Cuban crisis, similar to precisely what's happening now.
And I'm happy you brought this issue. I'm happy you brought this issue, because nobody would want his enemy to be close to him. So the Americans saw that, no, the Russians were establishing such a foothold in Fidel Castro's Cuba. And so they got some Cuban dissidents based in America, supported them with the with the weapons, and you know, they went on the Bay of Pigs invasion, which was a catastrophe. Similar thing happened with Nicolas Maduro's Venezuela recently, even though the US authorities say, hey, we are not part of it. So that is exactly what Russia is seeking to do. Under Vladimir Putin, we've seen 4 waves of NATO expansionism into Eastern Europe. This was unthinkable in the past. Now we have all those countries becoming NATO members. So Russia is saying, enough of it. We are not going to allow that. And when you follow Putin, you would realize that he's someone who has been very much opposed to the way Gorbachev and Boris Yeltsin ran the country by allowing these small countries to get away. So he's also seeking to reassert Russian authority and might in the area. When you listen to Western media, oh, dwindling force, Russia, oh, this. So I think it's a clear message he's also sending to the world.
Trying to assert the authority of Russia.
Absolutely.
In fact, we've heard from non-influential countries, and I'm using that word advisedly, such as Ghana, who are not really permanent on the Security Council, but key voices are yet to speak. At least we know the position of the West. Key voices in the East, such as China, are yet to. Well, I mean, but we know where they are likely to lean on this. Obviously, the other way, and not with the West. What's going to be that impact, not just on the world, but particularly here in Ghana and across the African continent as well? A lot of people have been asking that question.
Well, as you might be aware, oil prices, the Brent crude went by over $100 a barrel. We've never seen that since 2014. Obviously, when it goes up on the international market, it's like our BDCs are waiting for it to go, so everything. But when it comes down, they are adamant. Okay, so what it means is, just recently we had fuel prices breaking the 8s almost, and perhaps what is happening could even make it break the 9. And you know, when prices go up, it affects everything. Cost of living would go up and all that. And we also know that Russia and Ukraine, although they make up for only 2% of the global GDP, but they export a lot of wheat. And a lot of these North African countries rely on it for bread. And bread is a political issue in North Africa. Omar al-Bashir was overthrown when bread prices went up. That is what caused all of these demonstrations. And if things escalate and becomes a global issue, we might be forced to take sides.
Let me bring this dynamics of the instability within the West African sub-region and the dynamics out there with the Russian and Ukraine tension. Many have not really put an eye on the influence that could have on the wave of military coups that we're seeing across the West African sub-region. just a recent one from Guinea, we've seen there are claims of Russian interference in that process. Now that global governance is taking a backseat, the concern is that that wave may further radicalize across the West African sub-region. What's your take on that, Ray?
Okay, so we don't just have the Russians in West Africa. We have them, a lot of them in North Africa, including Libya and other places. Currently, the French are not happy with the Malians because Operation Barkhane has persisted for God knows how long. Still, the militants are active. They are even getting stronger by the day. So the Malians thought that, hey, we have to look to the east. So they brought the Wagner Group, which interestingly is making gains, believe it or not. Okay, and in Burkina Faso, after the coup, when people came out in the streets to jubilate, you had them carrying Russian flag. Okay, so Russia is like it is doing in that part of the world globally, is trying to reassert their authority. Okay, and a lot of countries might fall out with their, you know, long-lasting fellows, such as the French countries who have that long-lasting relationship with with France. So a lot of them might fall out. So that is a really a major issue that has to be looked at from that perspective.
So what's your fear for security in West Africa? Is there really a connect? I guess that's the question there.
Yes, there is a connect. There is a connect, because when countries resort to the use of mercenaries, it becomes a game changer. You see, you would have others also bringing in their mercenaries. And by the way, the whole world is turning mercenaries, so to speak.
What's your basis for saying that, really?
Most of the powers have their mercenary armies. The US might not call it mercenary, but Blackwater, for crying out loud, is a mercenary army. Okay, the Turkish have theirs, who have been fighting in Syria and Iraq for some time. The Saudis have theirs. The British, you know, it's all over the place. So when it happens that way, it might complicate the already fluid security situation we have in the West African sub-region. And already there are underlying issues of human insecurity and the fact that governments are not able to really address those issues that the people keep talking about. So it would rather complicate the
Ghana's national security obviously should be of interest to you as well, in terms of the strategies that we need to adopt in these trying times. What should that be?
Well, I think largely it will depend on government, how much they are willing to ensure that fuel prices don't spiral out of control. I think that is the major issue we would have. When fuel prices goes up, everything goes up. So if government is able to manage it by even putting in place subsidies, I think that can help. If not, it would pose an existential human insecurity threat to the country. Already a large chunk of the population live below the poverty line, a lot of unemployment in the system, so much anger. And recently I was telling a friend of mine, he's in government, I was like, you politicians, disguise yourself and sit in the taxis and the trotros
and listen to the conversations
say about you, you know. So this might deteriorate people's living conditions, because living conditions will of course be much more costlier, and that is the biggest security threat I see, because there's a direct correlation between human insecurity and fiscal insecurity.
And what I know is that obviously you're not a prophet, you could make some predictions at this point. How long will this go on?
Well, this morning, the last time I checked, the Russians were about 10 kilometers outside of Kiev. Western intelligence have said it already. They said that if Russia intends to go into Ukraine, it's just a matter of, you know, days. So I think that it's just now a matter of days, not weeks, for Russians to completely take over the country. But two scenarios: either the Russians would withdraw eventually after serving us that letter, so to speak, that hey, we are still in charge, or perhaps they install that puppet regime and create that buffer they've so longed for.
Adib Sani, I'm grateful that you've been able to join us.